I just knew deep down that I didn't want to stay in this relationship. And yet I couldn't leave him. And here was a guy that I was with that we really deeply connected on many levels, but he was drinking, and he even got to a point where he was hiding bottles around the house and, keeping it from me how much he actually was drinking. And yet I loved him, cared for him, and was like, yeah, I can't leave this relationship. And at the time, I didn't actually believe that I was deserving of more, of better. Like at the time, I was like, of course, I care for him. And I wanted to make things work. I wanted to have this relationship work for us and be able to be in a relationship. And at a certain point, I was living in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and he couldn't get a job there. So he ended up picking up work and getting a job up in Portland. And we did this long distance thing for a little while where we were commuting back and forth a couple times a month. And at the time, I actually was happier because I was living more free, more myself during the week, and then enjoying the little bit of travel and seeing him and doing things on the weekends. But it still wasn't quite working. And then at a certain point, he wanted to have us living together again. And so we both were offered a job in Los Angeles. And I remember for myself, I was like, is this really what I want? But I still couldn't leave him. Like, I couldn't leave this relationship, which was very connecting for us, but at the same time was not really happy for myself, and in some ways abusive for myself. So at the time, I remember just really like, am I going to do this? Am I going to move down there? And I was in the shower, of course, when we get these ideas, I was in the shower and I had this feeling inside of me of, in 2 years, I'm going to be in Europe. And I just knew it. I just knew deep down inside of me that I'm going to be there. I'm going to be living there. And I knew he wasn't going to be with me. Like, there was no thought or vision of him being part of that. So I decided, this is a way for me to leave where I'm at, switch it up, go to Los Angeles, and then in a couple years, I'm going to be over in Europe somewhere. We'll see where, I don't know yet. But that deep down feeling inside of me was a real knowing that this is going to happen. And so I then moved down to Los Angeles, and I'm with my partner, boyfriend at the time, and we were still struggling, and he was still drinking a lot, and we were going through crazy emotional roller coaster. And eventually it just got to a point where I was broken down. And I've shared other stories, I'll put links to it, of being so broken that I finally had to leave because I was broken from this relationship. So I still could not leave him until it really just was like, I can't live this way anymore. And the phrase that a friend would say is, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that was what I finally got to be able to say, I deserve more than this life, and I want more than this. So I left him, and within weeks of leaving him, I actually was talking with a studio in France. And that started the path of me going forward and being able to live in Europe. And they hired me when my contract was up with the studio in Los Angeles. And literally 2 years to the date, I was over in Europe. So talking about this, I want to share manifesting. And while yes, there was that whole story in the relationship, like I had no idea what I would go through to get there, but I did get through it, and I started to see my own value in the process because I didn't see that I had a value. I didn't see that I am creating this reality that I'm living in, and I did not believe that I was deserving of better. So for me, in being able to manifest and being able to create this, it's first really having the deep down knowing deep down feeling of you can have this. You can have this and you are deserving of it. So for me, I knew I would be living somewhere in Europe. And I didn't know at the time that it would be France. I just wanted to live abroad, and Europe seemed very appealing to me. So I was like, okay, where? You know, it could be England, it could be Spain, it could be Germany, you know, like where am I going to live? No idea at the time. But living over there actually was really appealing, and I knew I could have that. Like I knew I could live abroad and be really enjoying life abroad. So there was that first initial feeling of it. And then the steps of just letting it go. Like at the time, here I was still with my partner and like, oh, well, I don't see him in the picture, but I actually right now don't see me leaving him. So the whole idea of living abroad was just kind of like put out there, like, okay, at some point I'm going to live there. But right now it's not that. I'm not aligned to living there. And so the next step was just letting it go. And I did for the next year. He and I were living together, struggling, and I did not even have thoughts of Europe at that point. And eventually, again, I was so broken down that I finally left him. And within a week of leaving him, I felt myself again. I felt me. I felt more alive. And I was no longer bogged down by the hurt and pain that he was in. And I was in too for myself, but I wasn't actually supporting or having to take care of him as well. So I share that story as like, yes, we can have these things that we go through and struggling with and really difficult, and we can still come back to what we truly want in life and be manifesting it. So I then was releasing it, still talking with him all the time and, you know, really caring and loving him, but also I was free. Like I had this freedom in me finally, and I knew that I wanted to go live overseas. And so the next thing in manifesting was taking aligned actions. I started reaching out to friends that knew of studios, knew of places over in Europe, and they actually had connections, and some French guys that I knew that were like, oh yeah, they're starting up a studio in southern France. And I reached out to them, started talking to them, and because they were friends with friends, they knew my reputation then and knew and had a confidence in me because of the other friends as well. So I took more aligned actions to get to the steps in the place where I needed to be. So it's not that I just put it out to the universe and said, okay, universe, this is what I want, bring it to me. It's like, no, I needed to actually take steps and put it out there in my way too, of reaching out and saying, hey, I'm interested. And then I was hired with the studio in southern France, and they said, okay, as soon as your contract is up, we'll bring you over here. So again, it was literally 2 years to the day that I had that initial feeling of, I'm gonna make this happen. I went down to Los Angeles, started working there, and 2 years later, I was off to France. Again, the steps to manifesting is first having that initial feeling and knowing inside of you that you can have it, you deserve it. And then it's letting it go. The second one is just letting it out to the universe. And then the third is taking aligned actions. And being able to keep this energy within you, because like that first year, I wasn't even thinking about it. But then by that point of the second year where I had left my ex and started to live more my life and more aligned in myself, that's when I started to actually be the right vibration to be living abroad. That's when I started stepping into and being more aligned with that reality, where I certainly wasn't aligned with it when I was with him. So, It's stepping into knowing, being that life where I was like, yeah, of course I can live in Europe. Of course, I want this. So yes, of course I can be living over there. So it's this real energy of just knowing it and being it and living it, and then taking these steps that will help you go towards actually having it be a reality. So it was an interesting path for sure, and you can have all these different ways that things come in, but it's not about you controlling the path, and it's not about, oh, I haven't seen it yet, oh, I still don't see it, it's not that constant like, oh, I need it, where is it, I haven't seen it, because then that's what you're ending up creating yourself is, I still don't see it. It's about just being in the energy of knowing it, knowing that you can have that. And again, things might get in the way along the way, but you can have it and get there as well. So currently in the dialog box below, I have a freebie to a roadmap that you can snag up, and it's a roadmap to redefining success. And when I talk about this idea of redefining success, it's not that we're seeking externally outside of us anymore for success, but knowing deeper within us that our life, what we create, feels abundant and successful within us. So again, do check that out. That's in the dialog box below. And thank you guys for joining me today. If you are enjoying and getting value out of these videos, do hit that like, share, and subscribe. Thank you again. I'll see you in the next video.